welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the best books that I read this fall. So for today's video, I have separated all of my books that I read in the fall. We're going to be doing a wrap up, but I separated them into the worst books that I read this fall and the best books that I read this fall. If you want to hear more about the worst ones that I read, you can go and click somewhere on my channel. I'll leave a card here somewhere, and there will be a link to that video because I did release that a few days ago. And today we're going to be talking about the best ones that I read. So normally I would consider the best books that I read to be like 3 and up. But like I explained in my last video, I didn't actually have very many bad reads this season, which is awesome. I had a lot of 4- and 5-star reads. So I ended up putting 3 and under on my worst list. And we're just going to be talking about 4s and 5s on this video. I hope that makes sense. So we're actually going to start off the list with a genre that I don't typically read, but I love this author, and that is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This typically wouldn't be a book that I would normally pick out for myself. I normally like to read horror and thriller. A lot of you have probably come over here from my top 5 thriller recommendations book, so you guys know that I like thrillers. I read thrillers. That's what I love. But I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. I absolutely love Daisy Jones and the Six. Oh my goodness, that was probably one of my favorite books of a couple years back. All of her works I just absolutely have loved so far. So she is an author that I will pick up no matter what she writes. Now this one I would say probably is my least favorite of the ones that I have read from her in the past. But I still really did like it, and I gave it a 4 out of 5. And basically it is all about a party that gets thrown by these 4 siblings. Their parents have passed away, and their oldest sister has always taken care of them. She is a model, and she's kind of going through a rough time right now. Her husband has left her, and she's like trying to figure out what she's going to do with her life. And their father has been completely estranged. Sorry, I should say their mother passed away. Their father was completely estranged from their life. He is a huge famous rock star that is beloved by all of the world, but he, you know, left his family years ago, and he's never caught up with them since. And it kind of just goes through that timeline and really just talks about the connections and family and just the human spirit, really. And it was such a lovely, well-written book, and Taylor she just does such an amazing job of really making you feel like you are a part of the book, like you are there. She sets the scene so well, and she's such a great writer that you just really feel like you're a part of whatever era she's trying to write from. I believe this one was from the 90s, but you know, she's done from the 70s, she's done from the 50s. Like, she just is so good at researching timelines and really making you feel as though you are there during that time period. The next book that we're going to talk about is The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. And over on my worst books, I talked about, so funny, this author had one of my best books, and she also had one of my worst books this year. So she, I think, is definitely good at writing thrillers, and she should stick to that. But Laura Dave did amazing with this book, The Last Thing That He Told Me. I did expand on it in a different video that I did talking about, I think it was the one, Best Books to Read for Halloween, one of those recommendation videos that I did recently. But basically, this follows our protagonist who gets a strange message from her husband saying only the words "protect her." She comes to find out that basically he has been a part of a scam at work where he has unwittingly lost millions and millions of dollars for his clients, and he is now on the run. He has completely disappeared, and she is being left to take care of her estranged stepdaughter. I shouldn't say estranged, I guess. It's her stepdaughter who wants to be estranged. Her stepdaughter hates her. And she's left to take care of her. And basically, in trying to find her husband, they end up going on a trip together, her and her stepdaughter, and they find out all sorts of strange secrets about her husband's past. And they find out that her stepdaughter is actually in a lot of danger. And basically, this book just had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. You're trying to figure out what secrets the husband has hidden. You're trying to figure out what danger the daughter is in. And you're really rooting for this stepmother who is just so out of her element. She's trying her best. She's trying to protect this girl who hates her. And she's trying to figure out what, also like working through her own heartbreak, realizing that her husband may not be who she thought he was. So I really, really enjoyed this one, and I gave it a 5 out of 5. So this next one is actually one that I really don't know if I want to say this is on the best books that I read this year, but I really toyed between putting it on the best and the worst list. I mean, overall what it ended up being was that I looked at all my ratings for each book in the series, and they were all above a 3. I think the 3 was, I gave one of the books a 3, I believe. And the rest were 4s, I think, but it feels a little weird putting it on my best list because I don't feel like I really enjoyed it quite that much. And that is the Diviners series by Lippa Bray. And this one should have been right up my alley, you guys. Just the whole premise of it absolutely sounds amazing. You know, this group of teenagers all realize that they have different diviner powers, and they come together to fight evil that is just like corrupting the world basically on a global level. And it's up to these 17-year-old diviners to use their powers for good and to stop the evil that's occurring around them. The one thing that I will say is that I feel that these books could have been at least 100 pages less than they were. I found I really connected with the characters. I absolutely loved the characters in this book, but the plot developed very slowly, like painstakingly slowly, and there was so much that could have been cut out. And I found, to be honest with you, these books put me in a reading slump because they were at some points they were just so stagnant and almost boring that I didn't want to continue reading, but I knew I still wanted to see through with the end of the series. So I would just be like, anytime that I wanted to read, I'd be like, oh, but then I have to read that, you know, that book. And I didn't want to because it wasn't going anywhere. It was taking forever. These books are huge. They're quite thick. They're like 500 pages and up. And it just took me forever to get through them, even though this story technically should have been something I was really excited about and wanting to read. So it's just one of those things where, like I said, if it would have been cut down, like by at least 100 pages, I feel like we could have gotten rid of some of that fluff that didn't need to be there, would have moved the story along a little bit faster and kept me more engaged because I absolutely loved those characters. I loved the time period. It was set in the 30s in New York. Love everything about that. One thing I will say that she did really well was that she researched her time period very well, and like all the references. Once again, it made you believe that you were actually in the 30s in New York. All the phrases that the characters used and everything like that, you really got to see, even like the upheaval of the time with the racism and all of that. It explored so many different really, really good things that we need to be talking about. It explored racism, it explored sexuality, especially in those time periods. We had an asexual character, we had gay characters, like it was just, and we had characters of all different ethnicities as well, which was awesome to see some representation. The next book we're going to talk about is Missing Molly by Natalie Borelli, and I also spoke about this book on another recommendations video that I had earlier this year. But this one basically is about a girl named Molly who goes missing. Her entire family has been slaughtered. She was 12 years old at the time. Her whole family was slaughtered, but she goes missing and was never seen again. Now, our protagonist is Rachel, and she is working for a newspaper that is dying, and in order to try to bring themselves back, they are trying to launch a podcast, a true crime podcast, which will center around the story of Molly. Now, Rachel, we find out very early on in the book, actually is Molly, and she's kind of leading a double life. Basically, she is scared for the truth to come out. So she's trying to make this podcast not happen because she does not want Molly to be found. She wants to obviously keep her identity a secret because she's scared that if people find out that she is Molly, that they'll be after her. So she is trying to basically undo all this work that her coworkers are doing in trying to find out where Molly is. And she's freaking out the entire time. It is so interesting. It is such a good concept for a story. Once again, keeps you on the edge of your seat. Like, I listened to it on audiobook and I was just listening to it nonstop. It's very, very, very entertaining, and just, you are just wondering what is going to happen to this poor woman. Like, I can't even imagine. It's just such a really cool idea for a story. Number 5, once again, was already talked about, so I'm just gonna kind of gloss over it here. Oh, Missing Molly was a 5 out of 5, by the way. And I believe I had rated this one, which is Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. I believe I rated that one a 4 out of 5. But this one basically follows a town where a bunch of women have gone missing. Now, originally what had happened was years and years ago, I think it was 11 or 12 years ago, a woman and her daughter went missing. The woman ended up being found. She had suicided, or so they thought, but the daughter was never found. Now, 12 years later, the daughter returns, but there's questions as to where she has been, what has happened. She is extremely traumatized. When you find out kind of like the conditions that she's been kept in, it is absolutely horrific. And it's no wonder she's traumatized by this. But the daughter comes back, and then some other women from around the same neighborhood go missing again. So we're trying to figure out if these disappearances are connected in some way and what really happened to these women. It was really, really fast-paced read, which I, of course, really love, and I gave it a 4 out of 5. Number 6 is a series that I am having so much fun reading. This is just so fun, and it is the Betwixt and Between series by Dorinda Jones, and this is a cozy mystery series. This is the first cozy mystery series I have ever read. I don't know if you guys follow Peter Mon at all, but he has a booktube channel called Peter Likes Books, and he talks nonstop. Lately, that's all he's been reading is cozy mysteries, and so from him being so amped up about these cozy mysteries, I thought I want to check them out. So I found the Betwixt and Between series. I'm waiting for book number 4 to come out, but I absolutely love it, you guys. You know, it is just such a really, really cool idea for a series. It kind of reminds me of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, like the ones from when I was a kid. Not the new Netflix one now, but the old Sabrina the Teenage Witch, except it's adults, if that makes sense. So basically, our protagonist ends up finding out she's had a horrible, horrible last couple of months. Her husband has left her. She's like, and had taken everything, had taken her restaurant from her, and she's just basically left destitute and brokenhearted when she finds out that she has been left basically a mansion from a relative that she does not know and has never heard of. So she goes to see this house, and basically she ends up finding out that she's actually a witch, which she, as you can imagine, she's a 40-year-old woman. She's finding out she's a witch. She meets a very interesting love interest, and it's all about like life in this cozy town, and it's just like, it's funny and it's heartwarming, but at the same time it's also like kind of scary. She's coming into these powers. She's trying to save people with these powers, and it was the perfect read for the Halloween season. I love reading books about witches in the Halloween season, and it's just, I am really into this cozy mystery series, and I'm going to check out more as well. So I have on hold at my library another series by Dorinda Jones because I really liked this one, so I want to check out more of her work. But yeah, definitely really enjoyed these books. And there's 3 of them so far, and I'm waiting on the 4th one, and I really liked all of them. I think overall, I think I gave the first one a 5, the second one a 3, and the third one a 4. So overall, you know, we're in that like 4 area for this series so far. So the next one is Rules for Vanishing by Kate Alice Marshall. And this one, basically, for lack of a better explanation, is about an urban legend that comes to life. So the story follows our protagonist, Sarah, and her sister, Becca, has gone missing the past year. She's been missing for a year. And the last that her sister knows was she ended up going down this road, which is known for the urban legend of Lucy Gallows. Basically, it says that Lucy Gallows disappeared on this road, and this road will lead you into another dimension, and that's what ended up happening to Lucy. So Sarah recruits some of her friends, and they go in search a year later of her sister Becca, and they end up getting through to this other dimension on this road, and really, really creepy things start to happen on it. They're trying to find her sister, and they're trying to get out of this road alive. Basically, you have to make it to the end of the road following these certain rules that are listed in the urban legend, and if you can do that, then you can leave and go back to your dimension, but if you can't, you will be trapped inside the other dimension. So very spooky, very creepy, and I really enjoyed it. And I gave this one a 4 out of 5. So the next two books we're going to talk about is in the same series, but it's more of like an anthology series, I guess. So that is the series Diary of a Haunting, and the first one is called Diary of a Haunting. The second one is called Possession, both by M. Verano, but they both focus on different stories. This first one follows Paige, who moved out to Idaho, yes, from LA after her executive producer husband cheats on their mother and leaves her for like a 25-year-old woman. So she, her brother, and her mother all moved to Idaho for a fresh start, and they rent this creepy old house that has all sorts of strange things start to happen in it. There is a downstairs neighbor that inhabits the basement suite of the house who is also quite creepy, and she's trying to figure out what's going on in this house. There's like bug infestations, and her brother starts seeming like almost to become possessed, and really strange things start to happen, and she's trying to figure out what is going on. And then this next one, Possession, follows Letitia, who basically is becoming possessed throughout this book. It's super creepy. It's written from first-person perspective, and it's all like, both of these books are all in the form of diary entries by these girls. And so this one, you start to see her descent into madness as she becomes more and more possessed. By the end of the book, you're not 100% sure if that's what it was, if it was, you know, a demonic possession, or if it was something mental health that's been going on. But both of these stories were super creepy. This one actually had me full on scared. I was reading it actually last night. I just finished it this morning. I was reading it last night, and I had to stop reading it and listen to something happy because I was starting to get freaked out. Everybody else in my house was asleep, and I was like, I need to take a break. Which, that being said, like, these are young adult books, and it says ages 14 and up, and I don't know that this one in particular, this one may be 14, even that, I don't know. I feel like these are aged incorrectly. Like, this one actually scared me, so I feel, I don't know, I wouldn't let my 14-year-old read this, that's all I'm saying. But both of them were super creepy. I didn't really care for either of the characters too much, but I really liked the stories, and they were both like, the story was propelled really quickly. They were really fast, easy reads. They both had mixed media into them, so of course that always makes for a really fast read when there's pictures and whatnot. And then some, like, these books were really quick to get through. Like, some of the pages were like this, right? Like, they're diary entries. So, you know, it was made for really fast reads. So both of these got 4 out of 5s from me. And the last book that we are going to talk about today was my absolute favorite book that I read this fall, and that is The Mary Shelley Club by Goldie Moldavsky. I absolutely loved this book. This book was described on the back of the book as being I Know What You Did Last Summer meets Scream, and that is exactly, I cannot even say anymore, that is exactly what it is. It just gave me some sort of nostalgic feelings because, you know, in the 90s when both those movies came out, I watched those movies and I loved those movies. They were like some of my very first thrillers that I absolutely loved, and this really just encompassed that. And so basically it takes our main character who has had a horrible traumatic experience happen to her. She and her mother moved to a smaller town to try to get a fresh start from her. Basically, she was the victim of a home invasion, and she's just trying to cope. And how she's been coping a little bit strangely, because what she's been finding solace and comfort in is watching horror movies. So she's at this new school. She's only been able to make one friend there. The school's most popular girl has already turned against her and is making her life a living hell. And she finds solace in watching horror movies. When she stumbles upon a club called the Mary Shelley Club, who also love horror movies, she ends up kind of almost accidentally being initiated into this club, and they end up pulling all of these pranks. Like, basically the objective of the club is to take horror movie scenes and enact them out in real life. Obviously not actually kill people or hurt people, but scare people. The objective is to get a scream out of the subject that they are trying to do. So each person in this club picks a scene from a horror movie that they want to reenact, and they pick a target. And as soon as the target actually screams, then it's over, and, you know, they can run away or whatever. But the person has to scream. And of course, as you can imagine, this inevitably goes horribly wrong. And you kind of start to find out some things about some of the club members that are making you question. But it really does remind me of Scream meets I Know What You Did Last Summer. Anyways, you guys, those were the best books that I read this fall season. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of them yourself, and if you would like to head over and see my video that I did about the worst books that I read this fall season, I'll have that posted in an iCard somewhere in this video. So I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!